Welcome to the Academy of Influence. We are dedicated to empowering voices and elevating influence. Each episode, we dive deep into the strategies, stories, and skills that can help you harness your unique voice to build bridges, share ideas, and change the world. Whether you're looking to inspire, lead, or simply express yourself more effectively, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore the art and science of influence, one conversation at a time. So, today is the second episode, and we are very honored to have a fantastic guest, someone that I have a deep respect for and always have had great conversations with. This person is a communication consultant, a 2 times TEDx speaker, had extensive experience being a partner, managing, and working in public speaking and debate companies. He has also held leadership positions in Toastmasters. He is none other than the man, the legend, Akeel Alleyne. Welcome to the show.
Wow, what an introduction. All of it is true, but I have to get used to being introduced in that way. But thank you so much, Kian. I really appreciate the invitation, and the feeling is mutual. Much respect.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And just touching on your TEDx speech, I want to quote you quoting someone. A question is a tool to gain knowledge. So I hope today I will ask effective questions that will help us all gain knowledge and wisdom from you. So, what I want to know first is, how did you start out with in the realm of communication, and why did you want to get into it?
That is a good question, Kian. For as long as I can remember, I've always thought it was really important to say what you mean. I remember being in high school when the whole idea of being politically correct in the United States became really big. And all the people around me were having conversations about this. I've always thought it's really important to make sure that we are actually being clear and saying what we mean. And sometimes it means saying in 5 words really clearly what it is you're talking about, as opposed to using one word that you assume that everybody in the room understands and that no one in the room will be
Mhm,
offended by. That, I think, was when I first started really getting onto this idea of communication. Like, again, I've always been quite sensitive to the language, but I remember specifically
mhm,
in high school when this idea of political correctness came up, I just was very passionate. We got to say what we mean. And pretty much from then
mhm,
on, I got really interested in learning different languages. And as you learn different languages, as I'm sure you yourself know as somebody who's multilingual, right? Different
mhm,
words mean different things, different contexts, different sentence structures, all of that. So that idea of being able to say what you mean, really express what it is that you're trying to express accurately and clearly,
mhm,
that desire just increased because I was learning French first and then I started learning Chinese. And I remember thinking,
mhm,
okay, how do I say this in this language? You have a thought in your head and you're like, I want to be able to use this expression in another language, but that expression does not exist in that language.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
then you're constantly reminded, you have to think, what does this expression actually mean? What am I trying to express? And then rephrase it in another language, right? Which is so cool and also so frustrating. It's very humbling because it forces you to really think about, what is it that I'm trying to say? What is it that I'm trying to communicate?
Mhm.
And how can I make sure I communicate that same thought, idea, feeling, expression, whatever, to another person? But yeah, that is how I first got involved in communication and what kind of pushed me to continue to pursue that route.
At this point in my life, I can totally relate to what you say because I am more sensitive towards people's communication methods, how effective it is, or is it effective or not. And one point you brought up that is, I think, really important is clarity in communication, not assumptions. Because when you assume, you're leaving everything to chance and you might or might not get the desired response. And communication as a concept, as something to be taken seriously, didn't really enter my consciousness until I started working. On top of that, I didn't take it seriously until I got into Toastmasters like 5 years ago in my mid 30s. When I was growing up, you would think that speaking is an innate human skill.
Yeah.
You go to school, you learn language, you listen, you observe, and you copy, and it's very improvised.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's very improvised. And no one actually came and told us that communication is so important.
Mhm.
How are you saying this? Why are you saying this? What's your intention? What are you trying to say? Is there a better way of saying it?
Mhm.
Because in the end, communication is about getting an idea or getting a thought across. So the thing is, are we equipped with that skill set or with that consciousness to be able to do that? And that's something I think a lot of kids in Asia, especially coming from my background, we didn't really have that.
Yeah. I really love what you just said about this idea that we take speaking for granted. When you think about it, it doesn't really make sense, right? Because if you look at, for example, athletes who push their bodies to the limit, we are all born
Yeah.
with bodies. But
Yeah.
when I watch a professional athlete do what they do, I realize, wow,
Hmm.
my body, A, I didn't know that the human body could do that.
Hmm.
But B, I realized that they spend so much time, you have to spend so much time cultivating the body to be able to do that. It is capable of doing this thing. But just because we have a body doesn't mean that we are always using it in the most efficient way or the most ultimate way or to the most effective way, right? And
Hmm.
communication and language is the same. Just because we
Yep.
can speak and we talk to each other doesn't mean that we are always using our language in the most effective way.
Yes. Yeah, I think the comparison you made with an athlete being able to use their bodies in ways that we never thought possible. I think that was a really good comparison is that is we are born with these things and we use them, but we don't know what the limits are and how to use them most effectively. Let's talk about the differences in the communication culture between the US and China.
Mm,
What do you like? Where do you see the biggest differences?
that's a really interesting question, Kian, because I feel like what I'm about to say is going to both confirm and go
Mhm.
directly against the stereotype that people have for
Mhm.
Chinese speakers and English speakers, at least, or
Mhm.
US speakers. There's a stereotype when we're learning Chinese, and then also even Chinese people like to say it of themselves. They like to go around in circle. They talk around what they mean. They don't always go very directly to the point. And then the
Mhm.
stereotype is for people in the West, in particular, even for people from the US, that we're very direct. I think that when it comes to English speakers, at least in the US, we also have different ways of being indirect, but we are directly indirect in the sense that I will tell you a sentence. And for example, if you came in late to a meeting, for example, or for me, if I came on late to the podcast and I was
Mhm.
talking with somebody else from the US, and they could very much say, "Oh wow, right on time," or thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate you making this time, even though I know that you're really busy."
Do you think this is a more effective way of getting to the point of trying to tell them that they're late rather than telling them that they're late? Because some people they are in the camp of being direct. Don't go around circles. Just if they're late, just tell them you're late.
Mhm.
You don't have to worry about their feelings, about how they think. They should feel bad. But the other camp is we have to be considerate.
Mm,
Maybe something happened last minute. Maybe they were in a situation they couldn't control.
yeah.
And maybe this is their first time. Maybe they didn't mean it. What do you think of these two approaches when in this kind of situation?
Yeah. I Before I answer that, I want to make a statement that, again, as we've been talking about, we're playing with cultural uh, stereotypes or cultural norms that obviously there
Hmm.
will always be people who break the norm. I know very many Chinese people who are
Yeah.
very direct. I know very many Americans who are direct, and I know people who are not that way in both cultures. So it's just a cultural observation. That being said,
Hmm.
I think that the short answer is it depends on the person. The big thing that I've been pushing with everyone that I talk with when I'm coaching them or when I'm in Toastmasters, I say you need to be aware of your audience. Know
Hmm.
who it is that you're talking to, because what we were alluding to earlier, as a communicator, you have a thought that you want to put into the mind of the other person's head. It is much of the responsibility is on you to make sure that you can, as best as you can, communicate it in a way that they can receive it. You can't always
Hmm.
be 100%, but you do your homework. You do what you need to do to make sure that you can communicate the idea as effectively. It's not always a conversation. Sometimes it is a speech. Or if you're giving
Hmm.
feedback, like you might be giving feedback and that person has to go, or they might not respond to you, and you only get one chance to say that message the first time. So be aware of the audience. If you are talking to someone who doesn't have time for extra fluff or whatever, or they have thick skin, or they just appreciate direct feedback and they will give you time to explain afterwards, then I think 100% go ahead and do it. I also think if you realize that somebody's in a situation where they might need a little bit of time to regulate their emotions and figure out what's going on, then going in first with not necessarily fluff, but trying to understand where they're coming from and making them feel heard before you go and get very direct is also an effective way to get your message across. The short
True.
answer to that is know your audience. I think both are effective. It just depends on who you're talking to.
So basically, the goal is the same. The goal is to get them to improve or to change their behavior in some way.
Mm,
It's just the approach is either one of two extremes. One is you either care too much and don't give them enough of that tough love to help to push them to improve.
mm,
And the other side of the extreme is I don't care how you feel. I'm just gonna say what you need to hear.
mhm,
So I guess it's really just finding that middle ground approach.
mhm.
Like you said, consider your audience, think from their point of view, take your responses and blend it with an ounce of empathy so that they will receive it with more grace. They will thank you for it, and it will likely cause a change in behavior as well.
Yes.
I suppose this is the most effective approach towards changing a behavior in a positive way.
At least from what I've observed, yeah. And I love how you said that. It's on a spectrum. You can be anywhere on a spectrum at
Mhm,
any point in time. Just know where you need to be
mhm.
for the person you're talking to.
That is why you're a communications consultant. And that's one thing I want to ask you towards the end. Okay, you mentioned Toastmasters, because that's where we met, I think about 3 years ago in
Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time, someone in Imagine said, oh, yeah, we have this guest who's going to become a member. He's Akeel, he's a debate coach. So at the time, I think the first thing that came to my mind was most people come to Toastmasters because they want to improve
Mm.
confidence, public speaking. So I'm sure a lot of people might have asked you before, you're already so good at speaking. You are already so good at communicating. Why Toastmasters?
Yeah. I have gotten significantly better since I joined. One thing that I have found is prevalent in the at least District 85 Toastmasters, people say a lot. They're like, wow, yeah, you're definitely a native speaker.
Mm,
You're so good at communicating and so good at speaking. And I'm like, being a native speaker of English helped me to be more confident for sure. But this confidence that
mhm,
I build and this effectiveness of communication that you see and experience is not limited to me being a native. It is a lot of hard work. It is years of, like you said, coaching, debate, and trying to give feedback to any middle school, sometimes high school kids who don't really want to be there and they have to sit in a class with you for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and then they're
mhm,
preparing for contests, and you need to make sure that they can really find the feedback that you're giving valuable. It is hours of sitting in Toastmasters meetings and listening to what people are saying and trying to figure it out and giving them grace because they're second language speakers and saying, I think this is what you mean. And if you want to express this, then let's go and use it this way. It has been so much hard work. First of all, I've gotten a lot better since I jumped into Toastmasters, and I am forever
mhm,
grateful for the experience, truly. As far as why did I get into Toastmasters in the first place, I, as you said, was working in a public speaking and debate company at the time. And
mhm,
I had been coaching debate previously, and then we were online. Then eventually we started to move offline, and there was an increase in the public speaking classes. With this increase, I felt, okay, I really want to be taking this quite seriously. And I'm a fairly confident public speaker. I had done some speeches before in public, I'd facilitated workshops, so talking in front of people wasn't a big deal to me. However,
mhm,
I had only competed in maybe one or two public speaking competitions until that point. And I was trying to be preparing
mhm,
students for public speaking competitions. So this meant I needed to make sure I was at the top of my game. Essentially, I didn't want my students to become better public speakers than me. So I had to continue to upskill myself. And that was really the biggest push for me to join Toastmasters. Many people had told me it already, and I'd heard some really good speakers that I could get better. And I thought
Mhm.
once a week going in and joining a Toastmasters club, that's good practice. And then 3 years later, I realized there was so much more for me to gain from it.
To sum that up, it's there's always room for improvement. Doesn't matter what level you are, there's always a time and space for you to improve on your skill set. And the reason why I asked that is because before I joined Toastmasters, the only experience I have on stage is playing music.
Oh.
But I've never actually spoken on stage. But I guess it's the stage experience that I happen to carry over.
Mm,
So when I first started out in Toastmasters, a lot of people looked at me and said, "Oh wow, you're already so confident, you speak well. Why are you here?" And what you said was exactly what I told them as well. I said, to be honest, you, I don't know why you think I look confident. Deep down, I'm actually freaking out.
hmm
My conclusion was I have a lot of work to do and to grow. And it's that going back to that saying, the more you know, the more you don't know.
Yeah.
Before I came to Toastmasters, I just watched a bunch of TED Talk and TEDx videos. And yeah, it seems speaking on stage is no big deal. Maybe just go and practice a couple of times and you can pull it off. It's just speaking, right? And then when I got into Toastmasters, I realized, wow, an icebreaker is not easy.
Yeah.
Doing an impromptu speech is not easy. I've been doing it for 5 years and I still hesitate to raise my hand to volunteer to do an impromptu speech.
Yeah.
Now, talking about this is a question I like to ask a lot of people as well. If you were to promote an organization like Toastmasters to anyone,
Mm.
how would you promote it?
I have to do this a lot as a division director
Mhm.
who's constantly building clubs. Usually, especially when I go into corporations, for example, people who are working professionally, I start off by saying, I've observed, especially with my experience in HR, that there are usually one of three different things that holds back the potential of leadership in an organization. The first thing is skill, the second thing is knowledge, and the third thing is opportunity.
Mhm.
Usually, we have young employees or even older employees, and they feel like they want to take themselves to the next level, but they don't have the skills needed to get to that next level. Or they don't know where to find information to help them achieve the skills that they need to get to the next level. Or they have the skills, or they know how to find the information to increase their skills, but they don't have any opportunities to actually go and showcase those skills.
Mhm.
But this is actually going to hold a lot of companies back because they have people who have the desire to get better, but they can't. This is where Toastmasters comes
Mhm.
in because we provide a platform, weekly, bi weekly, maybe even monthly, depending on however you're free, meetings, opportunities for people to go take an online class, work through that online class that will tell them specifically if you want to lead a meeting, this is how you can lead a meeting. If you want to plan a project, this is how you can plan a project. And not only does it teach them how to do that, but it also requires them to reflect afterwards. And not only reflect by themselves, they have to share this reflection with other people in the room. And then they get feedback based on that reflection, based on the goals or whatever it is that they decide that they're going to talk about in that speech, in order to get better for the next time that they do something like that. This solves the knowledge problem because they know they can go online and now they have access to a broader network of people around the world. Literally, just because you're a Toastmaster, I was in university and I put my book bag down on my chair next to me, and my professor said, my husband was a Toastmaster and he isn't
Mhm.
active anymore, but he loves it. He would love to talk to you about Toastmasters. And I went and I had a conversation with somebody who was a Toastmaster like 5 years ago. It like
Mhm.
that easily, just because I had the Toastmaster sign on my bag. You build this connection, right? But then you also have this opportunity to get some really candid, universal feedback in a relatively safe place because we're all just trying out new things, right? It solves the skill problem, like I said, it solves the knowledge problem, and it solves the opportunity problem because people now have a safe space where they can go and try to be leaders. You can try to be the president, you can try to be the vice president of PR or other things like that. And people can now
Mhm.
see your effectiveness at leading. And even if they can't see it, maybe your boss isn't attending the Toastmasters meeting. You can now put it on your resume. When you go to apply for a promotion, you can say, hey, within the organization, I've been participating in this nonprofit organization on doing this on top of the work that I've been doing in order to upskill myself to make sure that I'd be ready for this thing. There's literally no downside except for the fact that you have to pay for it, which people are paying for anyway. Either the
Yeah.
company's losing money because their employees aren't able to perform at their best, or you're
Mhm.
pumping a lot of money into other like learning and development programs that are much more expensive than a Toastmasters membership would be for one person or two people or 20 or 40 people. So this
Mm.
is usually how I push it when it comes to organizations. You can solve three of the biggest problems that people have when it comes to creating more leaders in their company, and that is solving their lack of skills, solving an unawareness of where to find information, and also solving the problem of not having enough opportunities for people to upskill themselves.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I'm not saying this to patronize because I've been in Toastmasters for 5 years, and in my second year onwards, I just come to the realization that there is absolutely no downside.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying exercise is bad for you. Exercise can be bad for you if you overdo it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like anything, right? As long as you don't overdo it, you do it in moderation, it actually gives you a very good upside, especially in Toastmasters, because like you said, it solves the three big problems that many people have, personally or professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you come consistently, you practice constantly, absorb information and grow, I feel like it's the kind of organization that can help people to grow and blossom. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if I wasn't a member, I'd totally be sold. And I think whoever hears this who is not a Toastmasters member, if you're not sold by now, I don't know can what does.
Yeah. Yeah.
What can. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we have talked a bit about Toastmasters and stuff and your involvement in it. Now I want to move to the big topic,
Mhm.
your grand talk in TEDx. Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks. I'm actually genuinely very proud of that talk. So thank you for letting me talk about it.
When you told me that you were going to do this TEDx talk, I was really excited for you and also at the same time a tad bit jealous because I don't know why. Since I joined Toastmasters, I just had this dream of doing a TEDx talk, a TED talk myself,
Mm-hmm.
TEDx or TED, either way. But I don't know what I wanted to say on that stage. But it just seems like a stage where you want to be on and speak.
Mm-hmm.
Since you have done it, you are an inspiration for me to really try and realize this goal and to figure out how am I going to do it. Okay, so my first question for you about TEDx is what's your motivation to do it? Was it you that had the motivation to seek out the TEDx stage, or did the TEDx organization requesting or asking that you do a talk?
Mm. It was a mixture of both. I, like you, had always wanted to do a TED talk. There's that famous TED talk about procrastination where the guy starts off and he
Uh-huh.
said TED came to them, and I was like, yes, I have always wanted to have to say that I have done a TED talk in the past. That was literally me. But one of my friends, Christian, he had been approached by TEDx, one of the TEDx
Mhm.
organizations here in Shanghai, and then they said, "Yeah, we're looking for more speakers." And so then Christian recommended me to apply, and so just I went through and did the brief application for him, and they were like, "Yeah, you sound great, so let's get you on the stage."
Wow. It was that straightforward?
It was very straightforward. The I put it this way because I think that TEDx organizations, they have different methods, different channels for
Mhm.
getting their speakers. I would say that the reason that I say I'm a two-time TEDx speaker is because I spoke for the same organization. However, what they did was a kind of elimination style round where we prepared
Mhm.
one TED talk first last year in July, between from I think it was from June, July, August. They had three different sessions. And then based on audience feedback, they picked the nine speakers who had the best audience feedback. And then they reached out to those speakers and said, okay, now you're actually eligible to do the official TEDx for our, I don't know how to say
That
it, like
particular event
community. Yeah, for our community, that
or
particular event.
community event.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was one of the people who they reached out to.
Was it the same talk?
It
Was it
wasn't.
the same talk?
It was different.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
So
first one was
why did you decide to change?
the first one was only they said anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes, and mine ended up being I
Okay.
think anywhere from 9 to 11 minutes,
Mhm.
and the official one they said no longer than 18 minutes. Actually wanted to do this topic about questions for my original experience for the TED Talk. I just hadn't done enough research and I didn't have enough fully developed ideas. I ended up going on and doing a topic that, or taking a topic that I had done previously, which was talking about benefits of debate in life, and modifying that a little bit more just for helping people to giving them a few methods for how to reduce arguments in their daily lives. After they said, okay, we want you to do this TED Talk in February, I thought, all right, now I have. I think they approached us in November or December and said that we had some time. So I had about 2 months at this point to really
Mhm.
develop and work through this topic. And I said, I'm really passionate about this and I want to get this out there no matter what. Even if I wait till the last minute, I will talk about this topic. Thankfully, I didn't wait until the very last minute. But that's why I ended up changing because I wanted to do it originally, but I just didn't have enough time to make it as good as I wanted to make it. And I'm really glad that I did wait.
So I want to know about the process. So you had 2 months to prepare.
Mhm.
So was 2 months too little time, too much time? Did you procrastinate, or how did you approach your preparation towards that big day?
Mm. I procrastinated, but I procrastinated intelligently. When I was preparing for
Wow.
it, yeah, I know. When they told me essentially that I was one of the speakers who was going to be in the final event, it was, like I said, maybe beginning of December. And the whole month of December, I was going to be working on finals. Up until January,
Mhm.
mid January, I had finals for school. What I did was, first week of December or second week of December, I just took all of my notes that I had ever written about my topic, put them all into a Word document, read them over, and then did speech to text and just talked through my ideas.
Mm.
And I had that there, and I did a little bit of organization. Then I sent it to Andreas, and I sent it to Furzy, and I sent it to my friend Christian, the guy who recommended me to do the TED Talk the first time. And I said,
Mhm.
hey, you all, what do you think? They gave me feedback, and I didn't even look at it. I just saved the files. And then after the finals were over, I had about 3 weeks left to prepare, which honestly is still not that bad. That's when I opened back
Mhm.
up the doc. Oh, I forgot. I also sent it to my coach for TEDx. They assigned us a coach.
Mhm.
So I opened up the files once I was less busy. And then that's when I really tried to go to work. But I didn't, again, quoting the procrastination video, I didn't really do work until about 2 weeks out. And then 2 weeks out,
Mm.
I was deleting things and then saying it. I'm the type of person where I have to talk through my thoughts. So I just found some
Mhm.
opportunities to just give the speech as it was and edited a lot and went back through recordings, used transcription software and more text to speech in order to really get it to the point where I wanted it to be. But the final version of the speech wasn't ready until about most of it was ready about 5 days before. I'd made some
Wow.
minor changes about 3 days beforehand.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's nice to say this. I'll give you an example. Like when I was still very much involved in music, sometimes it just makes me smile a little when I see my idol make a small mistake on stage
Yeah.
or to reveal their humanness, because sometimes when we have an idol that we worship or that we admire, they always seem so perfect and out of reach. And sometimes when you see the human side of them, it inspires you, it gives you hope
Yeah.
that one day you can be just like them. So when you shared that story, I think what this can tell people is that a lot of it is actually very human.
Hmm.
Procrastinating is very human. Having some rough thoughts, getting feedback is also very normal. No one person is a genius that they can come up with the best ideas all alone.
Hmm.
That's what I learned from what you said just now.
Yeah.
And you end up doing a really great talk. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Like sitting through the whole talk for I think 17 plus minutes was very well designed.
Thank you. I really, like I said, I
It
worked
was
really
mm,
hard on it. And even for me, when I went and listened back to it, I don't always listen back to the
mhm,
things that I record of myself.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mhm,
difficult. But
yeah.
I listened back to it with my wife, and halfway through, I pressed the screen just to see how much time we had left, and there was only like 3 minutes left. And I said, "Wow, I even
Mhm.
I lost track of time, and I was giving the speech, and even I lost track of how long it was." So I felt really, like I said, really quite proud of it. For those of you all who haven't watched it yet,
Mhm.
you should watch it. Hopefully, you'll feel the same.
I will put the link down in the description box below.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you would do differently now that you've done it?
That is a good question. I would. One thing that I would do
Give us
differently.
one example.
Yeah, it would just it's. I thought really hard about my audience, and I thought, okay, I'm going to be talking to an audience here in Shanghai. Most likely, it will be majority Chinese speakers, native Chinese speakers at least. And from the original TED Talk, that the first round version, I remember there were a whole range of English levels. So I purposefully planned in at the beginning this reference to there's like a punchline, a pun in China. Everyone who's been through the Chinese education system for English knows there's a only one right way to answer "How are you?"
Mhm.
and the response is "I'm
Oh,
fine, thank you, and you."
I'm fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Ni
I
hao ma, wo hao.
yeah, essentially yeah, and I worked really hard on that and put it in there in the beginning. And when I did it, as soon as I said it, I realized that I underestimated my audience because there were more people who had exposure to more international backgrounds, or at least had used English enough that their first response wasn't necessarily that joke. And even though I don't think that I do think that it was effective still for the speech, I would have planned for something a bit more universal in order to connect with the audience,
Mhm.
as opposed to going so specific into this, thinking that my audience was going to be so mostly Chinese based.
Mhm. Okay, yeah. Going back to what we said before, there's always room for improvement after you've done it. You've digested, reflected, and then think about how can I do it better the next time.
Yeah.
So, watching through the whole thing, I really enjoyed. I truly did. But I cannot help notice that I think you were struggling staying in the red dot.
Yeah.
Is that a challenge? Because when we watch a TED Talk speech, i- like I know that the speakers are required to stand in the red carpet or the red area, and I couldn't help but notice how small yours was, and it's really hard not to move out of it. Like, did you plan around that red dot, or what was it like?
When I got to the venue, I saw the dot and I thought, that's too small for me. Because
They did not inform you guys beforehand.
no, we didn't know how big the dot was actually going to be. We saw pictures of the venue, but we didn't know how big that
Mhm.
part was going to be. And
Okay.
I did make the conscious decision. I said, this dot is great, and I'll start and end on this dot. But my goal today is to
Mhm.
connect with these people in this audience. And if I need to leave it, then I'm going to leave it. And I left it. And then I came back.
One thing this TED Talk of yours taught me is you must be ready for any kind of contingencies that might happen during anything. Like when you're practicing at home, everything is perfect, right? But when you're on stage, what if the mic fails?
Hmm.
How are you going to overcome that? So I think you did all of that really well. So that's if that's one thing I learned from your presentation was how you engage with your audience, how you incorporated a lot of personal stories, and also how you manage all the things that you could not foresee.
Hmm.
So that's something that I personally that was my takeaway from your TEDx speech. So yeah, again, great talk, and I hope to see more TEDx speech or even TED Talk speeches from you.
I'm glad that you got that takeaway because, to be honest, I think that many people who speak get so caught up in, I prepared this and I need to get through what I prepared, or I am this person, I can't mess up. But you forget that as soon as you get in the room, and Vin Jiang also says something about this in a lot of
Mhm.
his videos, as soon as you get in that room, you forget about you. It's not about you. It is about the
Yeah.
people who you are there to communicate this idea with. And once you can let go of that, once you turn that speech into a conversation, then it whatever happens is not uncomfortable because they're there with you. You're
Mhm.
not putting on a show or a performance. You're not trying to be somebody that you're not. You're being the person who's there to connect. And if I had, even
Mhm.
if I had tripped, I would have laughed it off and been like, "Yeah, this red dot is something else, isn't it?" And then stood back up and kept going with my speech because we're
Mhm.
here.
Consider your audience, connect with them, turn a speech into a conversation. I think that's something that I need to learn how to do myself as well. So, thank you so much for all the valuable wisdoms that you have shared today. Okay, so now we have come to the end of the podcast. Could you, because at the beginning of the speech, I introduced you as a communication consultant.
Mhm.
So, can you briefly explain what that is and what is it that you do that is being a communications consultant?
I can explain that. What it is that I do right now is I work with clients who have found that they have issues in one of three areas. The first area could be maybe they, as an individual, have an issue when it comes to general public speaking or communication. Maybe they're preparing for a TED Talk. I'm working with someone right now who's going to be doing a TEDx talk. Or maybe they
Mm.
just feel like in life, when they're communicating with their partner, they have issues that have been constantly brought up, but they don't know how to overcome those issues. So I work with them and coach them through what they need to do in order to be able to overcome these issues. The second type of offer service that I offer is for groups or teams. So if you are the leader of
Mhm.
a team and you find that when it comes to your team communication, there is some sort of bottleneck. Maybe you realize that every time that you send out emails, nobody reads them. They always come to meetings unprepared. Or maybe it is that there are different personalities on your team and you're not sure how to make them or how to get them to work together well. Usually it's a communication issue. And if you see that, then my consulting services come in where I help you to sit down, analyze what the problems are, and then we come up with a strategy that you can use to help to solve those things. The
Mm.
third service is eh, similar for the second one, except it is more for larger organizations. And this can be for larger internal structures where they need to analyze their communication efficiency, or maybe they want to look at external. How are they communicating their product, their brand, what it is that they want to say? It's not marketing because
Mm.
I'm not a marketing specialist, but I am a specialist when it comes to figuring out, is this what you want to say? Is this what the
Mhm.
audience is expecting you to say? And do these things line up to communicate the idea that you want to get across? So those are the three services
Mhm.
that I provide as a communication consultant.
Wonderful. And where can we find you?
Good question. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am on there. You can also find me on Instagram at Coach Akeel. That's my professional Instagram. If you're in China, you can find me on WeChat. I can also send you a link because I have a linked tree, and that has all of my important social media links, as well as a link to
Mm.
my TED Talk and some other videos or interviews and podcasts that I've done as well.
Okay, that's cool. And I will include all these links in the description box below. And that's how you can get in touch with Coach Akeel. So thank you very much again today for coming on this show and talking to us, sharing with us your ideas and wisdom on the topic of communications. And this is the Academy of Influence. This is the second episode. And please do subscribe if you like this. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you and bye bye.